The topic of today's video is love. What is unconditional love? What is conditional love? Um, Humans tend to, we value love, right? We value love and we associate love with relationships. Um, there's this kind of idea in modern times that modern relationships have devolved because modern relationships are only transactional. Um, and conditional, and there's no real love. And when people say real love, they're essentially saying unconditional love. Um, but the problem is that human relationships were always conditional. Um, in my opinion, humans are not really capable of unconditional love. There may be some humans who are capable of loving more conditionally compared to some unconditionally compared to someone else. Um, for example, one person's love may be more conditional than someone else's. So you could think of it as a scale, but humans are not capable of completely unconditional love. Um, some people may say, oh, perhaps like intimate relationships or like physical relationships may not be unconditional love, but your parents love you unconditionally or something like this. But even that's not true. You have to, people don't really understand how radical unconditional love is. Unconditional love, first of all, let's try and define what love is. So it's also helps to try and define what hate is. If you think about something you hate, if you hate something, you don't accept it, right? You don't accept it for what it is, and you would prefer it to be different. So, for example, if you let's say you hate war, you don't accept war for what it is, and you would rather war didn't exist or it was different or whatever, right? So you can just take the opposite of that. Love, in a sense, is acceptance, but not just like relative acceptance. It's essentially complete acceptance of a thing. Complete acceptance of a thing, exactly how it is, for what it is, and not needing it to change in any way. Right? It's complete acceptance of a thing for what it is. Since everything that exists is unique, right? That's why it may seem like you love some things and you may not love other things, is because you accept certain things more than others, because all humans have preferences, because we're all unique. And that's all tied in with our past experiences, um, our conditioned beliefs, and so on and so forth. But yes, humans are not capable of unconditional love. I would suggest that only God or an absolute self is capable of unconditional love. And that's partially because the reason why humans are not capable of unconditional love is because humans have physical forms which can only survive under certain conditions, which so humans have to survive, right? And unless someone is suicidal, pretty much everyone else that's not suicidal is acting upon, there's a fundamental decision that's being made at the deepest level of the psyche that I cannot die under any circumstances. I cannot die. I have to survive. And to survive, there are certain particular conditions that need to be fulfilled. Like you need to get food, you need to get sunlight, water, air, and all of this stuff, right? So the moment you become fixed on the idea that you must survive, then it already becomes fixed. Like all those conditions that need to be fulfilled already become fixed, right? So then everything that helps you to attain those things, you will prefer that. And everything that results in creating an obstacle for you to getting those things, you will reject it. Right. And if you think about it, if you think that humans are, in a sense, energetic beings and everything is constructed out of energy and the universe is a zero-sum game, and you could think of it as just a cosmic electrical circuit with the plus on one side and the negative on the other side, and everything is just being exchanged. Everything is trade. Everything is trade and exchange, right? You give something, you take something. So let's say you're purchasing an item, you're giving them money, and then you're receiving the item. And how did you get that money? You exchanged your time and energy, and you got the money. So everything is just an exchange. Literally everything is just energy exchange, right? And the whole game of survival is that you have to create a profit, right? Because if you just did nothing, the energy that you have, like let's say you've consumed some food, and let's just say for quantifying sake, let's say you had a meal and that was like 100 joules of energy or whatever, and you had like 3 meals. So now you have 300 joules of energy, but then if you hit 0, then you'll die. And then let's say you've had those 3 meals and now you stop eating. As time goes on, those joules of energy are going to just be dissipating, because those joules of energy are being used to pump your heart, to make your lungs breathe, and all this stuff to repair your cells. All of that energy is being used just as time goes on. It's not like if you don't do anything, you'll remain at the same energy. Like, no, you're dissipating at all times, which is why you need to keep on replenishing yourself, right? So when you're conducting these exchanges with others, it may be consciously or unconsciously, it doesn't really matter how, but in every exchange, you're actually trying to get more than you give. In every exchange, and every single person is doing that. Every single person is trying to get more than they give, so that they can create a profit, right? Like, let's say, for example, you go to work and you do 8 hours of labor, and then that deducts 50 joules of energy. You want to be paid enough money to buy food that would give you 65 joules of energy, so you would have 15 joules of energy surplus. That's what everyone's doing at an unconscious level or conscious level, right? And if you're getting that 15 joules of surplus, that means that someone else lost that 15 joules. So every time you're gaining, someone else is losing. Remember, because it's a zero-sum game. So, for example, when you're eating meat and you're eating like beef, all those calories that you're getting, that was all the calories that you took away from that cow when you killed it, or when the humans killed it and in the factory and whatever. See, so nothing is for free. Nothing is for free, right? And why am I explaining all of this? Because even relationships and all of these things it's all also part of survival, right? It's all also part of survival. So it could even be a family member, or it could be your spouse or whatever. Whether you realize it or not, you're trying to get more from them than you're giving to them. And like they're trying to do the same for you. So it's like a tug of war, right? It's a tug of war that's happening. There's always like a tension in these exchanges and relationships. And that's why there may be certain parents, you may say, oh, that parent loves their child unconditionally. But then they may be trying to condition their child to be a particular way, to have the same political beliefs as them, or to they want to make sure that they get this grade in school so they can get this job. And you may say, oh, that's because they love them and so on and so forth. But can't you see that the love that they give, which is the acceptance that they give to the child, is conditional on how the child performs and which decisions the child makes, right? And it goes vice versa. The child's love for the parent and acceptance of the parent is conditional on how much the parent loves them and how much the parent can provide for them and protect them whilst they're still young and vulnerable and so on. For example, there's many instances where certain parents will have a child and then they'll just leave them, abandon them when they're born, or they may abuse them, or they may not provide for them. And does it end up in a healthy, functional relationship? No, the child ends up hating the parent. And parents and children who have good relationships is usually because the parents provided them with love, support, protection when they were young. So the child loves the parent, and then probably as a result, because the parent did that for them, then as a result, the child's going to do well for the parent, especially as they get older and more vulnerable themselves in the later elderly years. See, so it's just really just always just an exchange. It's just always a zero-sum exchange. Everything is. And because we all need to survive and we all have particular needs which we need to be met, and of course, like a lot of that is just physical survival, but it's not just that. It's also emotional support, like it's emotional, it's psychological, spiritual, etc. So you may have a partner, like a physical partner, a physical intimate partner, your spouse or whatever, and perhaps you may not need them for financial support or like to support your like physical survival through like gaining resources, because you may be independent enough and competent enough to do that for yourself, but you may need them for emotional support or physical intimacy which you can't give yourself, and so on and so forth. So it's always about exchanging from different needs and so on. And therefore, because it's like that, your love and acceptance for them is conditional upon the conditions of whether they give that to you or not. See, there's many times where people will be in a good relationship, but then they might break up. Why? Because they stopped communicating. That's a condition. Or they stopped having sex. That's a condition. The guy wanted sex and the woman wasn't giving it enough, or vice versa. The guy wasn't giving her enough sex, or wasn't giving her enough emotional like support, or he wasn't earning enough, couldn't provide enough resources. See, so because we all have to survive and we all have individual needs, all of our relationships are all of them. You may have different relationships with different people, and you may need different things from different people. And you may not even be conscious of what you're using that person to get. But you usually are getting something from someone. Or they're getting something from you, or you're getting something from each other. Otherwise, there's not much value for the relationship in the first place. Like, there's this idea that marriage and so on used to be like purely about love, and we've lost that now. But No, if you look really back in the history, a lot of like marriage, in a sense, is almost like a business transaction. It used to be like families deciding with families, and it'll be arranged, and then it'll be like, oh, this woman's with this family, and they have like the agriculture and things, and then we've got the this thing, and then we're gonna come together and like form a superpower, and just like and benefit both of the families. See, it's all about transaction. This idea of love and so on is just like sprinkled on the top to kind of just make it seem nice, make it not seem like what it really just is, which is a cold, calculated decision about survival. See, because, and you may still disagree with everything I'm saying, but now let me give you an example of what it would look like if humans actually unconditionally loved each other. Real unconditional love would mean, let's say you're in a relationship with someone. Real unconditional love would mean that you would still love them completely. You would accept them completely. You wouldn't want anything about them to change still, even if they stabbed you. Or even if they took all of your money. Let's say you worked 20 years, your life, you've saved up your whole retirement fund. And let's say they just like all of the conversations you've had in the past 20 years, it was all a lie. They hated you the whole time. They didn't even like you. They just did that to get you to trust them, so that you give them certain details or something. Like they ask you, oh, like I just need £100, like just to pay off this thing, and then you just give them your card. You trust them so much, you just give them their card or something, and then they've just taken your whole retirement fund. And you would still, that if it was unconditional, that means you would still love them, even if they did that, or even if they stabbed you, or even if they killed your whole family. See, and people act like they love other people unconditionally, but then if certain conditions occurred, they would no longer love them, they would hate them. See, that already proves that it's conditional love, and it could only ever be conditional love. Like finite beings which exist, are incarnated and have to survive and can only thrive in certain conditions, cannot afford to love unconditionally, because it would mean the death of them. Right? It would mean you could have no biases, no preferences. Right? And actually, see, because conditional love is always about something in particular. It's always about something in particular. Like you conditionally love apples. Let's say you say you love apples. You conditionally love it because if the apple was rotten, you wouldn't love it. You wouldn't eat it if it was rotten. See, so it's based on the conditions that it's ripe. And it's not poisonous. It hasn't been poisoned, injected with poison and stuff. You see? So it's conditional, but you can conditionally love something in particular, right? But it's actually impossible to unconditionally love something in particular. Because the moment you unconditionally love one thing, you would have to unconditionally love everything. It's impossible to unconditionally love just one separate particular thing. That's actually impossible. It's genuinely impossible. Because in actuality, there are no separate objects. There are no just separate apples that exist on their own. Because apples, like they literally only exist within a certain environment, like within this world, this universe that we exist in. And it needs the air and the water and the soil and this and that and humans and every single thing. Literally everything is interconnected in one large cosmic field, and everything is connected to each other. There's not even such a thing as separate objects. That is just an illusion constructed in the minds of like animals, humans and animals, through labels and categories, imaginary categories which are projected onto what seems to be like separate objects, but there actually are no separate objects. So if you was to actually unconditionally love one thing, even if you was to unconditionally love one thing, you would have to simultaneously have to unconditionally love every single thing in the universe. And that would mean that you unconditionally love rape, death, torture, war, genocide, racism, sexism, um, like um, slavery, um, psychological manipulation, mental illness, psychosis, hallucinations. You would have to love all of that as much as you love experiencing an orgasm or winning the lottery or like, I don't know, having a perfectly healthy family. You would have to love every single thing and accept them all equally, exactly the same. You would not be allowed to even have one bias. See, that's how it is like from God's perspective. And the reason why only God could have that perspective is because God is selfless, or it's not really selfless. Well, God is the self, the absolute self, but it has no particular self. See, us humans, that's the unique aspect. We're completely unique. We have a particular self. Like this particular human body is not that particular human. And it's not this particular laptop. See, but God has no particularity. It's completely uniform, which means it's in a sense formless. It has no form. Therefore, it does not need to survive. There's no way that it could die because it's neither alive nor dead. It neither exists nor doesn't exist. It's just simply true. It's just simply absolutely true. It doesn't need to exist or not exist or be alive or be dead or anything like that. And therefore, it doesn't need to have any like preferences. It is completely indifferent. This is why certain philosophers of the past have had these theories of, like, for example, God created the universe and then, like, left it uninterfered, or God. I've even heard certain people say, God committed suicide when He created the universe, which is false because God was never alive, and it can't die, so it didn't commit suicide. But in a sense, what they're actually saying isn't completely false because it is true that in a sense God just created all of the potentiality of everything to occur, but God doesn't actually manipulate like specific details of things. It just simply allows it to run. It's a zero player game. God doesn't need to interfere to create order because since everything is connected to itself, since everything manifests out of the 0 point, it can essentially oscillate and manifest chaotically, and it will always eventually manifest as order as well. Like it can't create pure chaos and it can't create pure order. It simultaneously creates chaos and order as well simultaneously, right? Because you can't even have chaos without order, and you can't have order without chaos because they're co-defined against each other and they're codependently arising, right? So if there wasn't such a thing as order, there wouldn't be such a thing as chaos. And if there wasn't such a thing as chaos, there wouldn't be such a thing as order, right? Do you understand that? So that's why only a selfless being or an unmanifest being, a being with no agenda, no bias, no form that it needs to survive, no conditions that it needs to fill. Only such a being could love unconditionally. And that means that it accepts everything unconditionally. And that's why it's, in a sense, I like to use the rather than saying God committed suicide, I like to use the analogy of it's almost like God's driving a vehicle, but his hands are not on the wheel. He's driving, like his foot's down on accelerate, but his hands are off the wheel. He doesn't care if it like goes straight on the path or if it veers off and crashes or if it crashes that way. It doesn't care because like there's no right path. Every path is the right path because it just goes on for infinity. Every direction it goes infinitely that way, infinitely that way, infinitely that way. Like there's no like where it could go that would be the wrong path. There's no wrong path to take. Every path is the right path, so it doesn't even need to choose. It just goes forwards or it goes backwards. It doesn't even matter. It's just the same thing because there's not even a forwards or backwards. There's not even a right or a left. So yes, in a sense, God isn't really controlling anything. You could say it's completely chaotic and like anarchy. But order will always manifest even in anarchy. In fact, it will manifest because of it. Like, let's say for example, there like right now we have rules and so on, right? Like at the beginning of human time, let's just say that humans evolved like from animals or whatever, so on and so forth. At the beginning of time, like if you look at nature, nature has no rules. Like it has laws of like physics and gravity and things like that. It has laws, but it doesn't have rules. There's no rules in nature. If you just look at animals out in the wild, like what does the wild mean? It just means there's no rules. The only rule is the truth. Like what happens that is true, that is the rule. Right? So you could imagine if humans just evolved from that. We evolved. There was no rules before, and look at our society now. There's so many laws and rules and things that you can't break the law and so on and so forth, which create order, right? It manifested out of that. And let's say, for example, there was some cataclysmic event that let's say it didn't wipe humanity out, but let's say it did major damage to all the infrastructure and society had to reset. It would be chaos. It would be pure chaos at first because there would be no one to enforce the order. But then over time, order will just reconstruct itself, right? It just would happen naturally because there would be pure chaos, and then certain things that we would deem as wrong or that no one would enjoy would be occurring, like war and famine and so on and so forth. And then the people would just come up with a consensus. All right, cool. We're all gonna make a rule that where none of us is gonna do that because if none of us do that, it's better for all of us. And then it just slowly builds like that and builds like that and builds like that. But yeah, humans aren't capable of, unless a human realizes the absolute truth. But then at that point, it's not even really a human realizing the absolute truth. It's just the truth realizing itself. And they no longer would even really be identified with their body that it appears that they have incarnated into. They may still do certain activities like eating and all of this stuff just to kind of nourish what appears to be them, their physical incarnation, but they won't even be identified with their body anymore, right? And their body would still have preferences. They could like love unconditionally everything all equally and really have no preferences at the most inner core level, but their human body self, which is like a certain layer on top of that, would still have certain preferences. Like it's still, no matter how enlightened or something that a person is, if you stab them 100 times, they're not gonna like that on the surface level. On the most deepest level, they may feel completely indifferent. But on the surface level, they're gonna be completely not enjoying that. They're gonna be like rejecting it. But it's not really them that's rejecting it. It's just the human's like biological like creature, which is the human like organism, which is rejecting it because the organism, the human body, the flesh is trying to survive. Right. Like there are many people who are suicidal or who think they want to die, and until like yes, there are many people who commit suicide, right? But there are many people who are suicidal who don't commit suicide. And even when they want to be dead, their body is still breathing. See, because the body, like, even though you're kind of, it's like a vehicle that you're operating, you are not your body. So your body could be trying to survive even if your mind wants to die. You see? And even you're not even really your mind, but I'm just making that distinction, showing you that even your mind could want to die or thinks it wants to die, but then your body will still try and survive anyway. So what I'm just trying to explain is that a person could be like absolutely realized or whatever and love everything unconditionally, but still their human body and their human mind will still reject certain things and still have some biases. So that's why you can't just tell like some enlightened guru or something, yeah, just go burn yourself to prove that you're enlightened. If you love everything, then why don't you just burn yourself? Why don't you cut off your arm? Like, no, because their own body itself would reject that. And it's not even them rejecting, it's their body itself. Right? It's not like the human flesh that gets enlightened. It's the spirit, which has nothing to, which isn't manifest. It's there, it's true, but it's not manifested as a physical thing. So when I'm saying that humans are incapable of unconditional love, I'm speaking about like the human biological creatures, and the human mind is incapable of unconditional love because it always has to be conditional. Because otherwise, if you loved everything unconditionally, then you would, let's say you went into public. You might just burn yourself on a hot object. You might just walk in front of a car because you have no preference for avoiding cars and staying alive as opposed to getting hit by a car and dying. You have no if you really had no preference for that, then you would just get hit by a car eventually because you wouldn't even be trying to avoid it. You may not even consume food if you loved unconditionally because then you wouldn't even have the preference for staying alive and having your hunger satiated as opposed to starving to death. You wouldn't even have any like difference. You completely imagine you completely accepted starvation and dying of hunger. You might just die of hunger yourself. You might not even consume another meal. You see, so the human mechanism itself cannot afford to love unconditionally. And every single relationship you have and all these like every relationship you have and everything, it's all like it's all transactional. It always is. That doesn't mean that you can't like prefer some people. See, because that's where people get it wrong. They think that love is just like preferring someone a lot. Like you think, oh, that's your favorite person, so you love them the most or something. That's actually almost the opposite of love, because the more you prefer one thing and you're biased to one thing, that means you're being biased against everything else that isn't that one thing, you see. Whereas unconditional love, true love, is being completely unbiased to everything. It's completely uniform. You love everything exactly the same. You have no biases, no skews. See, so it's actually completely opposite. What people say is love is actually the opposite of love. It's like attachment. Attachment isn't love. If you really loved someone so much, like unconditionally, they could break up with you. You could never see them again in your whole life, and you would still love them, and you wouldn't even like resent them or anything like that. You wouldn't wish that I could see them. Like you might have broken up with someone and you still love them even if you haven't seen them. So you think, oh yeah, so that means I love them unconditionally. But you still may like slightly have residual thoughts of, I wish I could see them still. I wish I could have a conversation or something. See, then that's still a bias. You love them when they're with you in person. You don't love them when they're dead or when they no longer exist or no longer in your life. See, so all of these things are very subtle conditions. And everything in this dualistic plane of manifest reality is all conditional. Every single thing is conditional. So yeah, but yeah, as I said, that doesn't mean you can't like have certain like good friends, like I'm not saying you can't love people, but you have to understand that it's conditional. And yes, there are degrees to this. So there may be someone, like, let's say for example, as I said before, some people might say your parents love you unconditionally or so on and so forth. That's because it's like, essentially what you're saying is that person has less conditions that you need to fulfill for them to still accept you. There may be someone who needs you to fulfill 100 conditions for them to love you. That's kind of like how things are going in modern dating and so on. They need you to do this, 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 and then I'll love you. See, that's complete. That's like the lowest level. That's conditional, but the most conditional love. Then there's still going to be conditional love. As I said, humans can't unconditionally love. It's always going to be conditional, but it may be that, oh, you only need them to fulfill one and two things. You just want them to be nice and to be there. That's it. And see, so it's still conditional love, but the amount of conditions that you need, like, to love them and accept them is way less than something like compared to someone else and so on and so forth. See, so in that way, you can still kind of categorize or kind of explain and understand how you may actually love or prefer some people as opposed to others. Just because I'm saying that humans are not capable of unconditional love and only conditional love, that doesn't mean you love everyone the same. That's actually completely false. That's actually the opposite of what I'm saying. Conditional love means that it's impossible actually to love two people the same. You always have like a slight preference of one against the other, right? And there's certain people who you have less conditions for to accept and love them, whereas for other people you have way more conditions that you would need them to fulfill for you to accept them and love them, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I hope that kind of explains what love is. Actually, and let me just go at a more deeper level as well. In a sense, this manifest reality is almost a consequence of God's unconditional love. And that's really why people ask, why does evil exist and so on? It's literally because of that, because God has no preference or bias against evil. It doesn't prefer goodness to evil. That's where like Christianity and all of this stuff and moralists go wrong. They think that goodness is inherently like better or like more true than like badness and wrongness, when actually no, they're completely equal. So that's really why evil exists. And unconditional love, in a sense, is almost not synonymous, but it's almost equivalent to surrender. It almost has surrender, and I think that's in a sense really what like, for example, in Christianity, Christ and the crucifixion and all of that. I'm not saying all of Christianity is wrong and all of that, like what I said about thing, but yeah, I think that, for example, that's what the crucifixion, in a sense, represents, is pure surrender. Like, you're surrendering even to your suffering, and you're bearing your cross and so on and so forth, because you're even surrendering to the wrong, to all the treachery in the world. You're surrendering to everything. It's not like you only like the good stuff and you hate the bad stuff. That's exactly opposite to what I'm saying. It's like you have to accept all the bad stuff as much as you accept the good stuff. And in fact, all the bad stuff, in a sense, exists to test your surrender and your love, because it's easy to love the good stuff. And there wouldn't really be a test, in a sense, if there wasn't any bad things. And just because you accept all the bad things and treachery, that doesn't mean you engage in them. See, that's something that the ego man might say. Oh, so then, all right, cool. If I accept it, that means I can just start killing everyone and robbing everyone. Like, no, you can accept those things and not engage in them simply because you're intelligent enough to realize the stupidity in that. And a lot of spiritual practice is just about, is, as I said, humans aren't capable of unconditional love, but you aren't actually even a human at your most fundamental level. You are just spirit, and the spirit can evolve to a point where you love unconditionally, and that's where all the spiritual practice is mainly about, is essentially cultivating the capacity to love more and more unconditionally until you love everything unconditionally, equally, without bias, and you surrender to everything, which is just surrendering to the truth. Because that's the thing, is when once you realize what absolute truth is, as I said many times before, is just that the truth is true. There's no cause to it. There's no reason or mechanical way it happened. There's no place that it happened. There's no who that it happened to. The truth is just true. Absolutely. Which means it could never be any other way. It's inevitable. See, it's not that reality is true, but it could be false. See, it's not that like existence exists, but if some other condition changed in the past, maybe everything wouldn't have existed. No, everything exists. Everything is real right here, right now. This video is here because it was always going to be here. It was inevitable. Like, it's not that something could have changed in the past and maybe this video would have not existed. Maybe humans wouldn't have not have existed. Maybe like this was all a mistake. Like, no, nothing was a mistake. Mistakes are impossible, because mistakes like assume that there is a right way and a wrong way when there isn't. Right? There's only a right way. Everything is right. That's what I'm saying. That's what unconditional love is. And once you realize that the truth will always be true, there's no matter what we do or what anyone does, it doesn't matter if you're conscious of it or not. The truth will always be true. It's completely absolute. It's completely inevitable. It's completely eternal. It will always be that way. There's nothing that anyone can do to change it. Then you only have two choices, and really you only have one. But there's essentially, you have the choice to reject it, reject reality and run away and let's try and escape, which is actually impossible, or you can accept it. So if you choose the first option, as I said, it's impossible because truth is absolute and it's all encompassing. You may think truth is over here, so I'm going to run over there to fantasy land, but over there is the truth as well. So you may think you're running away, but like running away from the truth, but wherever you run away to will be the truth will be there as well. And then you may think, cool, so I'll run over there, but truth is going to be over there as well. So every time you try to run away from truth, you're just running towards the truth. So that's impossible. And you can keep on doing that. Like, you can keep on like making that blunder indefinitely if you want to. But in a sense, you're just postponing the inevitable surrender that the soul, in a sense, or the spirit will have to do in the end, once you realize that trying to run away or trying to correct reality or trying to like escape reality or anything like that is futile. Once you fully realize that at your soul level, then all you can do is to just completely accept everything and love everything. And I call it the choiceless choice, because really it is the only choice that there is, because what else can you do? It's not like you can turn reality off or make the truth be untrue. It's impossible. The truth is absolute. So either you accept it or you don't. And that's what all of spirituality really is about, is increasing your capacity for unconditional love. Because the truth will always be true regardless of if you love it or hate it. So you may as well love it. And when you do come to that place of unconditional love and unconditional surrender, only then will you start to experience the high levels of bliss and joy and ecstasy of the sages and saints and etc., etc. And if you keep on trying to run away from it, you'll be unknowingly causing suffering to yourself. You'll be blaming reality. You'll be saying reality is causing me the suffering, but you're causing the suffering to yourself by not embracing and accepting reality and by trying to run away from it. That's actually what's causing the suffering. So yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Um, I don't know, maybe I forgot something, but I think that was a pretty good explanation of what true unconditional love is and what conditional love is. Let me know if you disagree with anything. Um, let me know if you enjoyed, if you learned anything. And yeah, cheers.